So here in the summary, the lessons learned. In principle, number one, our civil rights as Americans are sacred. We should have diversity, inclusion, or equity in our society. We must always be vigilant against legalized discrimination, which includes xenophobia, segregation, injustice. This is the reality in the year 2024. In some aspects, it hasn't changed since 1942, or has it? That's a rhetorical question. But here's a poem, not my poem, by a prisoner at the Gila River concentration camp. She wrote in 1945. She was in prison from the city of Pasadena. She wrote this poem by Mary Matsuyawa. My plea, oh God, I pray that I may bear a cross to set my people free, that I may help to take goodwill across an understanding sea. Oh God, I pray that someday every race may stand on equal plane, and prejudice will find no dwelling place in the peace that all may gain. By a teenager and prisoner at the Gila River concentration camp. That is a belief of justice by a teenager from Pasadena, Mary Matsuyawa, in 1945. My concluding remark is by a famous thinker named George Santayana. George Santayana. And these words are still in effect as he wrote that back around 1905 to now. Those who cannot learn from history are doomed to repeat it. From 1942 to 2024, I see traces and echoes in our America now. That concludes my lecture, so we can have an open dialogue. Oh, arigato. My first inquiry, are there any surviving prisoners among us of the concentration camp? Sir, your name? Your name, sir?
Phil Shigekuni. Phil, I was 8 years old.
In 1942?
Yes.
Which camp did you go? Jerome?
I was lived in Los Angeles, wound up in Amachi, Colorado,
Oh,
the southeastern corner of Colorado.
yeah, in the high desert. Yes.
I appreciate your lecture. I think looking forward, it's important for us to recognize the people who are being discriminated against in our society now. That we can not just look at the past and bemoan what happened to us and realize that we need to gain a measure of justice which we have received in the form of reparations or redress.
Yes.
But there are, for instance, children now who are being sent to concentration camps, separating them from their parents, the immigrant parents.
Breaking up, separating.
Yeah. So I think that should be acknowledged. There's been a group of Japanese Americans who have demonstrated in various sites about this terrible injustice.
Yes.
Separating children from their parents in this way. The other thing I think we need to think about is support for reparations for slavery. The JCL
Yes.
that I'm a member of now has introduced or will be introducing legislation to call for examination of slavery and
Yes.
how we
Consequence.
can make amends for the terrible injustice that slavery was in this, that it caused the human suffering
Yes.
that occurred to the parents and grandparents and of many of our African American fellow citizens. So those are my only two comments at this point.
Well, thanks for those two comments, but I'd like to hear from you, Phil. Any lessons learned from your evacuation, expulsion to Colorado? Anything you want to share, your life lesson you want to share among us
Well,
here?
the one thing that occurred to me was one point about Mitsui Endo, that one person that you mentioned. She was a significant person that doesn't get the credit that she deserves,
Yes.
because we were able to get out of camp early on. We were able to get out in '44. My folks were able to get out. My dad got a job as a mechanic in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, so we spent the last 2 years of the war in Milwaukee. The thing that people don't realize is that we were released from the camp, but we couldn't come back to California. It was Mitsuri Endo who fought with the Supreme Court.
After that,
And she won her case. A very dogged fight. She went from one camp to another. When one camp closed, she realized she had to go. She had to stay interned in order to keep her case alive.
Right.
So she went from one camp to another when the camps closed. But she finally won her case.
Yes. That's a hero right there.
Otherwise, you know, Mary and my wife's family got out of camp in Arkansas. They couldn't come back to California. They spent 2 years working on a farm in Arkansas. Okay, while we were free in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, they were in Arkansas because they could not come back to California. So I think we need to realize that states are able to have this terrible hold on people.
Yes.
And that we need to think about that in terms of what's going on in this country now and the way that states are able to be manipulated by politicians
Yes.
to discriminate against groups of people.